I gave up on my husband and he wants another chance. What do I do? My husband of 11 years has never been romantic, which is fine. I'm not the type to ask for the moon and stars. I only ever asked for him to be nice and respectful. Growing up, I was constantly put down by the people around me. I was my family's black sheep. I met my husband at my first job at a call center, and when we realized we also went to the same college, we hit it off. We were honestly all business, and just instantly became each other's support system. We were both broke, from broken families, and didn't have anyone looking out for us, so it felt great to have someone. My husband was in his second year and I was on my first year. Time went on, and as things got tighter, I got another job and another. My husband was more ahead and going through so much. I quit school and worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time so he could focus and finish school. When he was done, he said he would help me get through school, but on his last year I got pregnant. He wanted to quit school to get a job, but I told him he was so close to finishing and that he should just focus on school. I still worked both jobs while I was pregnant and never gave him anything to worry about. When his mom found out I was pregnant, she said he was dead to her. He was so shocked and hurt, and that pain turned into anger at me. He felt like I was ruining his life. I tried to understand his pain. He looked at me like he hated me and said I looked like an alien while I was pregnant. I never took it to heart and tried to be patient. Neither of us grew up with both of our parents, so I wanted to try really hard so we could give that to our son. Fast forward, it has been a long 11 years. My husband got his bachelor's and master's degree, and I never got to go back to school because he said I had to take care of the kids. We had a baby girl 4 years later. I love my kids, and I feel very blessed and thanked my husband for being able to take care of us, but deep down it felt unfair, and I felt ungrateful for wanting more. So I let it go. This whole time my husband never got me a Christmas present, Valentine, anniversary gift. Nothing, but it was fine because he provided so much, but I felt alone. He didn't like to talk to me and spent all his time on his phone, and if I ever cried or told him I was sad, he said that it was a luxury that I could afford because he gave me everything, and that if I didn't like it, I could leave. A year and a half ago, my husband got laid off and has been struggling to find a 6-figure job like he was used to having, and our finances got so bad that I offered to get a job to help. My husband was working from home, so he stayed with the kids while I went to work as a food prep for a Chinese restaurant. It was $16 an hour, and the work was grueling. I was pulling double shifts any chance I got and was happy to help, but my husband was so upset about it. He would say that I was trying to find someone else and that he hoped I had bad days at work. Honestly, I was really confused and hurt, and for the first time I couldn't be patient or understanding. I lost it. My husband said if I didn't like the way he treated me, I could leave. I was done and said okay, and we both just got quiet. Later that night, we talked about how it was over and how we would still both stay in the house together until one of us could afford to move out. After we broke it off and I stopped cooking and cleaning up after him, we started to get along more. It was like we were genuine friends. It's been 8 months since we separated, and all of a sudden, my husband says he wants to get back together. He said that he has realized that he loves me and doesn't see me as his maid anymore. I didn't know he saw me that way, and it felt like a slap to the face. He wanted me to be happy and grateful that he wants to try again, and that he sees me as an actual person. He started bringing me flowers, saying he loves me and that I'm beautiful every day. It makes me feel horrible knowing that he was capable of being kind to me these past 11 years, and he never once was. I'm very clear where I stand and tell him we are never getting back together. All he says is he is never going to give up. I don't want to get back together, but he says I'm not giving our kids a chance to grow up with their parents together the way we did. He makes me feel like the bad guy, like I'm breaking our family. I feel horrible and don't know how to feel or what to do. What do I do? Am I wrong for holding my ground? Am I the bad guy? You are absolutely not the bad guy here for standing up for yourself after years of neglect and emotional abuse. His sudden change of heart is likely a manipulation tactic to keep you around now that you're no longer fulfilling his every need. It's emotional abuse to involve the kids in this decision, so don't let guilt cloud your judgment. Stick to your plan to separate and prioritize your own well-being. Am I the antagonist for telling my husband that he needs to hurry the hell up because I'm tired of staying with his mother? My husband and I closed on a property 8 days ago in his home state, and before we moved in, he wanted to do a deep clean. I'm highly allergic to bleach, and we have a 1-month-old baby, so our son and myself couldn't be in the home while he did this. He asked his mother if we could stay there and she was fine with it, but he keeps prolonging the process. He said it would only be a day of deep cleaning. It was a fairly new house, so it wasn't filthy or in need of repair. He has literally only done 2 rooms because he keeps finding new tasks that he wants to complete before we move in, like replacing the carpet or installing a new shower because the one in the home was outdated. The home was built in 2019. The issue is that I've grown to absolutely hate his mother during this time period. His sister also lives here and I'm 2 seconds from snapping on her as well. She's 32 and kid-free because she keeps pulling the farble guy. I'm really concerned that you have postpartum depression. Let me take the baby when you go get help talk. When in all actuality, I'm getting pissed off and irritable because they won't leave me or my baby alone. Like his mom has come into the guest room 4 times at 5:36 a.m. and waking me up saying I'm going to take the baby so you can sleep, even though the baby was sleeping. Telling me to let my kid cry it out because if not, I'm going to spoil him. Putting food in front of me that I hate, spaghetti, Salisbury steak, etc., and giving me a clip to eat, and if I say I don't like that food, I get a tough shit. You need to eat. His sister even stood over me yesterday saying she would force feed me if she had to. And then they make comments like, what would you even do without our community helping you? The community being them and their help. I'm non-confrontational, usually, but this morning I snapped and told them they needed to back off because they are starting to really get on my last nerve, and now it's awkward here. Well, 2 hours ago my husband calls and says I think I'm going to replace this light fixture. I can't get it clean the way I would like. At this point I told him to hurry the hell up because I'm done staying with his mother. I would gladly take my savings and go to a hotel at this point if it meant that I don't have to be near these people. Now he's upset with me because his mom means well and they are just trying to help, and he's asking me to just ignore them to save the family dynamic because he hasn't seen them in 8 years and he doesn't want to soil the family dynamic because he wants to be involved with his family. But at this point I hate this family. They aren't helping and I've told them this much, and now they are just trying to diagnose me with postpartum depression and tell me I need psychiatric help. Am I the asshole? I don't know anyone in the area. It says there's no available drivers in my area for Uber and ride shares. My vehicle is still in our last state, and we were supposed to go grab it and the remainder of our stuff after moving into our home. So right now I'm solely reliant on him and his vehicle, but he's gone from like 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. working on the house, just to get absolutely nothing done. Cleaning with bleach was his idea because he's under the impression nothing gets properly clean unless you use bleach, despite me telling him otherwise. This whole situation is incredibly sketchy and unsettling. Your husband's absence, use of bleach despite your allergies, and overall behavior are huge red flags. Your husband and in-laws are isolating you and forcing you into a situation that is making you feel unsafe. It's time to pack up and leave, reaching out to friends and family for help if necessary. Your safety and well-being should be the top priority. Husband has anger issues and snapped while holding our son. I can't handle it anymore. I, 36 female, have been with my husband for 16 years, married for 6 of those years. He has always had anger issues since we began dating, but he has been working on himself without the help of therapy, and he has definitely improved a whole lot since then. He used to scream and punch walls to the point he would leave a hole in the wall or just break things. He no longer breaks things or punches holes in walls. But he sometimes still cannot process his anger and frustrations at times, and just does a blood-curdling scream. Other things he used to do is drive overly aggressive on the roads whenever someone cuts him off on the road or tailgates him. He'd then speed, cross solid lines on the road to catch up to the individual if they were speeding off to cut them off as well. I know it's extremely stupid of him. I've yelled and screamed at him many times over this as I was in the passenger seat. I would afterwards tell him calmly I didn't feel safe, and ask him what was the point of doing all that, cause at the end of the day, the other driver doesn't care that they cut him off, and he just put our lives in danger over some idiot. He always has a stone-cold face and bluntly says sorry. I won't do it again afterwards. Over the years he got better with the aggressive driving. Then we got pregnant. I told him he can't drive aggressively anymore. No more accidental slips of anger on the road. I was more patient back then, but now with our son I will not tolerate it. This leads to the 2 anger incidents that have happened since our 3-month-old was born. 1. Husband was driving. I was in the back seat with our son. Someone was speeding up from behind us. Road was 1 lane both directions. Car crosses the solid line to cut us off. Husband then speeds up way above the speed limit. I knew what was about to happen and told him, "Don't you dare drive aggressive with our son and I in the car." He still does. I am yelling at him. He cuts off the other vehicle, brake checks the other car, and hard stops in front of the car in the middle of an intersection. Then my husband speeds off. 2. My son was crying inconsolably tonight. I was busy pumping breast milk. My husband was tending to our son. Our son managed to fall asleep, but then he wakes up and cries again. Husband cannot calm down our son. Husband sighs and does his blood-curdling scream. I run downstairs and demand my husband to hand over our son and for him to go take a walk to calm down. Husband says no. I demand him to hand over the child again. Husband replies with, "Why? You don't trust me with him? I'm not going to hurt him." My husband apologized for screaming while holding our son. Said it won't happen again and that just slipped. I'm frustrated, and I don't know how to deal with this anymore. I've told him he needs to go see a therapist about his anger issues. He says no. He has always had issues with talking about his emotions and doesn't feel comfortable talking to a stranger about his issues. I know his anger stems from how his mother treated and still treats him. His mother acts out in an explosive manner as well when she's angry, so I'm positive he just picked up on this from his mom. I don't want our son exposed to this sort of behavior and think it's okay or have his life in danger if my husband drives like a lunatic again. How many times can he apologize? How many more times can he slip until something bad happens? I told him that I don't expect him to never be angry. We're all human. We are allowed to be angry, but he needs to process his anger in a healthy way. Aside from the anger, my husband is a sweet man. He really does take care of me and our son. 99.9% of the time, we are a happy, loving couple with no issues. Then that 0.01% is his anger fits. But this anger is just a whole different beast that I don't know how to deal with anymore. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I just feel like my only options now are A. Demand Wen goes to therapy as soon as possible and work on his anger issues. B. If he says no, I have to leave him and try to take full custody of our son. I can try to stop my husband's anger fits when we're together, but if we are separated, there's no way for me to monitor how he is around our son. I just feel bad because my husband made so much progress with his anger issues, but the fact that he already snapped twice since our son was born, 3 months ago. I fear it's going to happen again, and I swear if my son gets killed in a car accident, I don't know if I will ever be the same again. Up. I understand that he has improved a lot without therapy, but if he continues to hold in his emotions until he explodes, it could end in disaster, especially with a baby in the car. I knew someone whose son-in-law lost his temper and shook his son, resulting in the baby's death. Do you really want to risk having those same experiences with him? Leaving him may be the best option for the safety of yourself and your child, as there are ways to ensure supervised visitation if needed. Am I the antagonist for correcting the lie my half-siblings told that my dad used to be their stepdad? So I, 27-year-old male, have 3 younger half-siblings, 24-year-old female, 22-year-old male, and 21-year-old male. We're maternal half-siblings and I had different dad to them. Their dad was dating my mom for several years, but they never got married. So he wasn't legally ever my stepdad, but I guess he would kind of get the title since he lived with my mom and I lived with her half the time. He was never interested in me and I was never interested in him. He used to creep me out. So I don't really think of him like that, but technically their dad would have been my step. Mine was never anything to them. When my mom was pregnant with the youngest, their dad was arrested and he went to prison. He was briefly released 8 years later, but ended up going back to prison. He wasn't a good guy and has a long list of convictions now. I was 8 when the mom passed. I was living with my dad full-time when she died. She was not taking good care of me and was taking her anger about her boyfriend's release out on me through a lot of yelling and talking to me like shit. When the mom died, a social worker got involved and my half-siblings were removed. They had no biological family willing to take them, and the social worker asked my dad if he would consider a kinship care agreement so they could be raised alongside me. My dad said that was not something he would be interested in, and so my half-siblings were placed in foster care. My dad did agree to some visits. We had 1 visit every 2 months for years. The visits were never easy because my half-siblings would ask to move in with my dad and me, and they would ask why my dad didn't visit and why couldn't they be with him instead so we could live together. They were separated most of the time in foster care and would put that on me and my dad as well. I refused the visits once I turned 16. I hadn't wanted them for a while, but it was more annoying than anything to have to repeat the same conversation every 2 months. My dad let me make the decision because he really had to drag me there for most of the visits anyway. We had no contact for years, and then just over 2 years ago, they reached out to me and said they wanted a relationship again. I told them I didn't, and they said they wouldn't mention my dad again. So I agreed and things were going all right. Not having to have that fight with them made it easier to care. But then a few weeks ago I found out at my half-brother's 21st birthday party that they have been lying to people claiming my dad was their stepdad, and he dumped them in foster care as soon as my mom died. They apparently knew most people wouldn't think he was wrong if he was just my dad. They never knew. So they spun a story. I told people the truth when it came up, and afterward I told my half-siblings that I was so done with them and that their obsession with my dad taking them in is what drove me crazy before. I told them he wasn't their anything and lying was not the way to win me over. They accused me of ruining their lives by exposing their lies. Am I the asshole? Not the antagonist. While I can understand your siblings' pain and difficulty in being placed in foster care, they don't have the right to place that responsibility onto your father. Your dad was well out of your mother's life by the time they came along, and it's easier to blame him instead of your mother and their father. Exposing a lie almost never makes you an asshole. I'm not sure that you can have a relationship with your half-siblings as long as this false narrative is taking up rent in their heads. Am I the antagonist for telling my mom her wedding anniversary was not the #1 priority for me? My mother celebrated being 20 years married to her husband John last weekend. They were throwing a party for all their friends and family to celebrate. My family and I were supposed to go, but I had to tell them we wouldn't make it a few days beforehand because 2 of my children were sick. We live in another state, so had to travel to be there, and there was no way that was happening when I had 2 sick kids. My mother told me not to say I wouldn't be there and to wait and see how things worked that Saturday because maybe everyone would be all better and we could still drive out and make it. But the kids were still sick. Our youngest was actually a lot worse and was hospitalized later that night while the party was actually ongoing. Thankfully, we got him home Sunday, but it was a lot. My mother called me yesterday and wanted to know why I hadn't found a way to make it work. She told me she would have thought celebrating my parents' 20-year wedding anniversary would have been the #1 priority for me. I told her it wasn't my #1 priority, my children were. She told me of course, but she would still imagine I would make it a priority to celebrate my parents' marriage. I told her not in those circumstances. She said celebrating your parents is supposed to be a good thing. I pointed out to her that it was not my parents' anniversary because she has never told me her and my dad's wedding anniversary. He died when I was only 6. And that while her husband is a great guy and I get along fine with him, she can't keep acting like her marriage to my dad and my dad didn't exist. For context, I said this to my mother because after my dad died when I was 6, she stopped talking about him. She never wanted me to ask about him, and when she got remarried she wanted me to take her husband's last name and agree to being adopted. She pushed the narrative that he was now my dad and that it was disrespectful to her husband and the life they were building to mention my dad again. She would talk about her husband being her only love, her true love, how he gave her all her kids. She erased my dad and she argued with her own family from time to time when they would mention dad. Her family said she and my dad adored each other while he was alive and they couldn't understand it. My mother's husband honestly didn't care about me talking about my dad, or mom for that matter, but mom refused. She was upset when I chose to use a female version of my dad's name for my daughter. She was upset that my wife and I had a photo of dad at our wedding. She really just wants everyone to forget about him and focus on her current marriage. Anyway, during this disagreement with my mother over her anniversary, and after I said that to her, she told me that she has been married for 20 years, and I'm almost 30, so her husband deserves to be acknowledged as my dad, and their marriage is deserving of being a priority for me. She told me she was ashamed of my childish behavior. Am I the asshole? Not the antagonist. Your children come first, that's obvious. There is something off about your mother, which was apparent even before you described how she had erased your bio father from existence. No caring grandparent would insist you prioritize her celebration over a child's health, especially if they had been hospitalized. Am I the antagonist for leaving after my husband let his buddy's wife help with our home repairs? My husband and I bought a home 4 months ago, and his friend coworker lives next door with his wife and their 6 children. We both have a 5-month-old. When we bought the home, it was in need of repair. All the carpets needed to be ripped out, as they were repulsive. All the walls needed repair, holes in walls, and to be repainted. But my husband dragged his feet because we just had a baby and he didn't want to add more to our plate. He decided to do repairs this week. Prior to me giving birth, I was a general contractor and had been working in construction since I was 15. I have helped build multiple homes, done flooring, painting, and have even done concrete work, foundations, so I'm very experienced in that department. My husband is not. He's worked in restaurants since he was a teenager, so he has no idea what he's doing. What I had planned to do was repair the walls and paint them when he worked on the rugs. After that was completed, I planned to build all of our own shelving, as our home has a lack of storage space of any kind, including closets. Along the way of assessing, we noticed some outside work that absolutely needed to be done to prevent mold and moisture as well, which he would take care of. And as an added measure, I planned to build our bed. We are currently sleeping on a mattress on the floor because prior to us moving, our stuff was destroyed in a flood. So I was going to build us a frame, like I've done multiple other times. Now on to the issue. My husband has decided that I can't help him because of the baby. The place is small, so he doesn't want the baby inside. He says that me building anything will take too much time and has decided to go out and buy shelving and bed frames at a much higher cost than I could build one for. He bought all white paint instead of the paint we agreed on because this way is just faster. And his buddy's wife next door came over yesterday with her own 5-month-old to see how things were going and asked him if she could help, and he said yes, despite knowing that I'm going mental because he won't let me do anything, even though this is literally my profession. She just stuck her kid in my kid's jumper and started helping. As soon as he told her she could help, I just took my baby and left. Told him I'd be at my mother's. He's now upset with me because I don't understand that he's just trying to get this done. So I commented on the fact that he should have let me help him, but instead, he allowed his buddy's wife to do something I should have been doing in the first place. He says I'm overreacting because I know why he didn't want me helping, but if they don't care that their child is around it, then that's a them problem. I don't even want to go back now. I'm so disgusted that he's even letting her help, while knowing that I am already pissed that he won't let me do anything. Am I the antagonist? Your husband seems to be trying to avoid watching the child while you work, or has some traditional gender role views. It's important to remember that a marriage isn't a dictatorship, and you have the right to work on your house as much as you feel able to. Perhaps consider having him watch the child while you work, and have a discussion about expectations and priorities to find a solution that works for both of you. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.